The great council chamber floated in open space, far from any star. Its walls were wide and curved, made of dark metal that reflected cold light. Giant banners hung in the air, showing symbols of conquest and war. This was where alien warlords met to decide the fate of weaker worlds. They arrived one by one, tall and armored, their footsteps heavy and loud. Some had sharp claws, others long horns or glowing eyes. Their voices filled the chamber with deep sounds and harsh laughter. They had gathered for one reason: to speak about humans. A large screen lit up in the center of the room. It showed images of Earth, blue oceans, green land, small cities shining like dots. One warlord leaned forward and laughed. His voice echoed. He spoke about how small humans were. Another mocked how humans had soft skin and no natural armor. Someone joked about how easily a human body could break. More laughter followed. They talked about human lifespans. Too short, they said. A few decades of life. Too weak to matter. One warlord claimed humans were not made for war. Another said humans survived only because stronger races ignored them. The room filled with cruel jokes. They mocked human voices for being quiet. They mocked human fear. They mocked human kindness, calling it weakness. Every insult brought more laughter. Near the edge of the chamber stood 3 humans. James stood straight, his hands behind his back. He wore a simple dark uniform. His face was calm. His eyes did not move much, but they watched everything. Emily stood beside him. Her shoulders were tight, but she did not speak. Her jaw was set. She kept her eyes forward, even when laughter rose louder. Michael stood slightly behind them. His fists tightened for a moment, then relaxed. He took a slow breath and stayed silent. They were envoys. They had come to speak. But no one had asked them to talk yet. A warlord noticed them and pointed. He laughed louder than the others. He asked why such fragile beings were allowed inside the chamber. Another warlord said humans should be grateful they were not already destroyed. James did not react. His face stayed still. Inside his mind, he counted every word, every tone, every insult. Emily felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. She remembered her training. Silence was sometimes stronger than words. Michael looked at the floor for a second, then back up. He remembered Earth. He remembered cities rebuilt after war. He remembered people standing back up after loss. The screen changed images. It showed human soldiers helping each other. A warlord laughed and said humans needed too much support. Another said humans could not survive alone. More voices joined in. The chamber felt heavy with sound. James noticed something important. While the warlords laughed, none of them looked away from the screen for long. They were mocking, but they were also watching closely. One warlord spoke about human fear. He said humans panic easily. Another claimed humans surrender fast. James remembered history. He remembered humans standing when they should have fallen. He remembered small groups holding against larger forces. He remembered silence before action. Emily noticed how the warlords spoke loudly, trying to impress each other. Their laughter felt forced. Too proud. Michael noticed something else. The warlords talked about strength as if it were only size and power. They did not speak about endurance. They did not speak about patience. The insults continued. The council chamber echoed with them. James felt no need to answer. Not yet. He remembered a lesson from Earth. Sometimes, letting someone speak showed more than stopping them. The warlords believed they were safe. They believed humans were nothing. That belief filled the room. Emily shifted her weight slightly. A warlord noticed and laughed again, calling her movement weak. She met his gaze for 1 second.
Calm. Steady.
The warlord frowned. Just a little. Michael noticed that moment and filed it away in his mind. The laughter grew again. One warlord suggested humans should be used for labor. Another said humans would break too easily. The room agreed. James felt the words settle like dust. He did not forget any of them. The screen showed one final image. A group of humans standing together, tired but unbroken. The warlords laughed louder than before. They saw weakness. James saw something else. He saw connection. He saw stubborn survival. He saw quiet strength. Emily felt the same. She remembered nights on Earth when everything felt lost, yet people kept going. Not loud, not proud, just steady. Michael remembered the sound of silence after a storm. Calm, but powerful. The laughter slowly died down as the warlords finished speaking. The chamber felt full of confidence and pride. James lifted his head slightly.
He still did not speak.
The warlords believed they had won something just by mocking. They believed silence meant fear. They did not understand that silence could also mean patience. The humans stood still as the council moved on to other matters. The insults were over, but their echo remained. James looked once more at the chamber, at the size, at the power, at the noise. Then he looked at Emily and Michael. They did not need words. The warlords had spoken freely, and the humans had listened. Every insult was remembered. Every laugh was noted. The chamber returned to its loud, proud state. But somewhere beneath it, something had shifted. The mockery was finished, and the silence that followed would matter more than the warlords knew. The frontier world was dry and silent. Red dust covered the ground, and broken rocks stretched to the horizon. The sky was pale and thin, with no clouds and no comfort. This world had no cities, no life, and no mercy. It was chosen for one reason: it was hard to survive here. Above the planet, alien ships waited in orbit. Their sensors watched everything. Cameras followed every step on the ground. The warlords wanted proof. They wanted to see humans fail. On the surface stood a small human team. David checked the horizon. His armor was scratched and old, but clean. He moved with care, not rush. His eyes scanned the land, always searching. Jessica adjusted the pack on her back. It was heavy, filled with tools, supplies, and medical gear. Her face showed focus, not fear. John stood a short distance away, holding a scanner. He tapped it once and frowned. The readings were bad. The air was thin. The ground was unstable. Energy levels were strange. The test had begun. The rules were simple and cruel. The humans had to reach an old station far across the desert. No support. No rescue. Limited supplies. If they failed, it would prove the warlords were right. The alien observers laughed quietly from orbit. They spoke about heat, hunger, and pressure. They expected panic. They expected collapse. David gave a short signal, and the team moved. They walked for hours. The heat pressed down on them. The sun burned without mercy. Sweat soaked their suits, but they kept moving. Jessica noticed John slowing and moved closer. She said nothing, just adjusted his pack slightly to ease the weight. John nodded once in thanks. The ground shifted under their boots. Small rocks slid. Cracks opened and closed with quiet sounds. This world was unstable. A warning beep sounded. John stopped and checked a scanner. The ground ahead was weak. One wrong step could send them into a deep break below. The alien warlords leaned forward in their seats. This was the moment, they thought. Fear would take hold. David raised his hand. The team stopped. He studied the ground, then the rocks, then the shadows. Slowly, he marked a safer path. They moved again, step by careful step. The heat grew worse. Water supplies dropped faster than planned. Jessica checked the numbers twice, then once more. She did not speak, but worry sat behind her eyes. Hours passed. The sun began to lower, but the cold came quickly. This planet did not forgive weakness. The temperature dropped fast. Their suits struggled to adjust. John's hands shook as he worked on a power unit. Jessica noticed and knelt beside him. She helped without words. Her hands were steady. His breathing slowed. Above them, the alien warlords spoke loudly. They mocked how humans needed warmth, how their bodies could not adapt fast enough. The night grew darker. Wind cut across the land like blades. Dust filled the air. The team reached a narrow canyon. It was the only path forward. The walls were tall and uneven. The scanner showed danger, but there was no other route. David went first. He tested each step. The canyon shifted slightly under his weight. A loud crack echoed. The ground gave way beneath John's foot. For a moment he fell. Jessica grabbed his arm without thinking. David dropped to the ground and reached out. Together, they held him. John hung over darkness. His breathing was fast. His grip slipped once. The alien warlords stood from their seats. This was it. This was failure. David spoke calmly. He told John to breathe, to look at him,
To trust.
Jessica tightened her hold. Her arms burned, but she did not let go. John steadied himself. Slowly, with help, he climbed back onto solid ground. No one spoke for a long moment. Above, the alien warlords fell silent. Some shifted uncomfortably. The team moved on. They made camp near the canyon wall. Supplies were low. Water was rationed. Energy was shared carefully. Jessica treated small injuries.
Cuts.
Burns.
Strain.
Nothing serious, but enough to slow them. David looked at the stars. He thought about Earth. About people watching, without knowing. About history repeating itself. John repaired the scanner. It flickered, then stabilized. He allowed himself a small smile. The next day was worse. A storm came without warning. Dust filled the air so thick they could barely see. Wind knocked them to the ground. Equipment rattled and shook. They huddled together behind a rock formation. The storm lasted for hours. Supplies were damaged. One pack was lost to the wind. The alien warlords spoke again.
Loud. Certain.
They said humans would give up now. No resources. No hope. David checked the remaining supplies. The numbers were bad. Jessica met his eyes. She nodded once. John looked tired, but his hands were steady as he recalculated a route. A shorter path. More dangerous. But possible. They moved as soon as the storm passed. The final stretch was the hardest. Their bodies ached. Their suits were worn. Their minds were tired. The old station appeared on the horizon.
Broken. Silent.
But standing. The alien warlords leaned close to their screens. Some frowned. Some said it did not matter. Humans would collapse at the end. David felt his legs shake as they climbed the final slope. Jessica stumbled once but caught herself. John nearly dropped his scanner but held on. Step by step, they reached the station door. David placed his hand on the panel and activated the signal. The test was complete. Silence filled the alien command chamber. No cheers. No laughter. Just watching. The humans did not celebrate. They sat on the ground, breathing hard. Exhausted.
Alive.
From orbit, the warlords watched closely. The humans had not broken. And that was not what the warlords expected. The frontier world did not stay quiet for long. After the test ended, the alien warlords decided to push further. They wanted more proof. They sent forces to the planet, not to help, but to apply pressure. They believed humans would retreat when real danger appeared. Human ships landed near the old station. The ground shook as engines powered down. The air was thin, cold, and filled with dust. Inside the station, lights flickered back to life. Old walls hummed with weak power. It was not a strong place, but it was enough. Daniel stood over a simple map projected in the air.
His voice was calm.
He did not raise it. He pointed to narrow paths, broken terrain, and unstable ground. Every mark was careful. Lauren stood beside him, checking signals and power levels. Her fingers moved fast, but her face stayed steady. She spoke in short, clear sentences. No wasted words. They did not talk about fear. They talked about angles,
Timing.
distance. Outside, alien forces spread out. Heavy boots crushed the red dust. Their armor was thick. Their weapons were large. They moved with confidence. They expected humans to run. Ashley worked in a small room near the center of the station. It was quiet there. The air smelled of metal and dust. She moved from one injured human to another.
Burns.
Strains. Cracked armor. She treated them all with steady hands. Her voice was soft, but firm. She told them to breathe. to stay awake, to trust the plan. No one asked if they would survive. They focused on the moment. Daniel watched the alien movement through old sensors. The data was slow, but enough. He adjusted positions quietly. Lauren sent short signals to human teams outside. Move left. Hold.
Wait.
No shouting. No panic. Above the planet, alien warlords watched with interest. They laughed when they saw the small number of humans. They mocked the weak defenses. They spoke of quick victory. On the surface, James arrived. He stepped off the transport ship and looked at the land.
The dust.
The sky. The broken station. He listened to reports without interrupting. He walked through the station slowly. He saw tired faces. He saw damage. He saw calm. Daniel explained the plan. Lauren added details. Ashley continued her work without stopping. James nodded once. The alien forces moved closer. Their weapons powered up. The ground trembled under their weight. Human teams took positions among rocks, broken walls, and narrow paths. They did not stand in open ground. They did not show themselves. The first alien unit advanced too fast. The ground beneath them collapsed. Dust rose. Armor sank. Heavy bodies struggled. Human weapons fired, not loud, not wild, but controlled. Short bursts. Careful aim. The alien laughter above paused. More alien units advanced from another side. Daniel watched the timing and gave a single signal. Lauren rerouted power to old station systems. Lights flared outside. Sensors blinded enemy targeting. Human teams moved while the aliens hesitated. Ashley treated a wounded soldier who had taken a hard fall. The injury was serious, but not fatal. She stabilized him and sent him back with support. The battle spread, but it was not chaotic. Humans did not charge. They did not retreat. They adjusted. When one path failed, they used another. When a weapon overheated, they switched roles. When someone fell, someone else stepped in. Alien forces grew frustrated. Their heavy armor slowed them. Their large weapons were useless in narrow spaces. Their voices grew louder. Orders overlapped. Confusion spread. Above, some warlords stopped laughing. James stood near the station entrance. He watched everything. He listened to reports. He noticed patterns. He saw that the aliens relied on strength and fear. He saw they pushed forward even when it failed. James made one decision. He ordered all human teams to fall back, not away, but inward. Daniel hesitated for half a second, then understood. Lauren adjusted the signals instantly. Human teams moved back into the narrowest areas near the station. The ground there was weakest. The paths were tight. Alien forces followed, eager and careless. The trap closed. The ground collapsed in controlled sections. Heavy alien armor sank. Movement stopped. Human teams sealed exits. Power systems surged briefly, then cut off. The battlefield went quiet. Dust settled slowly. Ashley moved quickly to treat the injured, human and alien alike. She did not ask who they were. Daniel checked the map again. The plan had worked. Lauren leaned against the wall for a moment, then straightened. James looked at the still land. He spoke quietly into the communicator. Ceasefire. The humans obeyed. Above the planet, the alien warlords stared at their screens. Their forces were trapped, disabled, alive but helpless. No cheers came from the humans. No victory cries. Only calm breathing. Quiet movement. The alien laughter faded, replaced by long silence. For the first time, the warlords did not speak. They watched humans stand their ground, not with noise, not with pride, but with control. The turning moment had passed, and nothing would be the same again. The battle did not end with a loud sound. It ended with silence. On the frontier world, the dust slowly settled. Broken ground lay still. Alien machines stood frozen where they had stopped. No engines burned. No weapons fired. Movement had ended. Human teams held their positions. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They waited. Above the planet, alien fleets filled the sky. Massive ships hovered in perfect formation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, their lights dimmed. Engines powered down. Weapons went dark. The fleets stopped moving. Inside the alien command chambers, voices died mid-sentence. Warlords stared at their screens. Some leaned forward. Others stood still, unsure what to say. Their plans had failed too quickly. On the surface, James lowered his hand from the communicator. His voice had been calm when he gave the final order. He had not raised it. He had not needed to. Daniel checked the battlefield map one last time. All hostile movement had stopped. He released a slow breath he did not know he was holding. Lauren monitored the sensors. No incoming fire. No power spikes. No hidden signals. She nodded once to herself. Ashley finished treating the last wounded human. She sat back on her heels for a moment, feeling the weight leave her shoulders. Everyone who could be saved had been saved. Michael stood slightly apart from the others. He held a small recording device in his hands. It was simple, old, and reliable. He had turned it on minutes ago, before the final moments. Now, it captured something rare. Silence. No alien voices. No mocking laughter. No threats. Only the faint sound of wind across broken land. Michael adjusted the device slightly. He wanted to be sure. This moment mattered. He remembered the first council meeting. The laughter. The insults. The way the warlords spoke as if humans were already defeated. That sound was gone now. Human teams slowly regrouped near the station. Some leaned against walls. Some sat on the ground. Their armor was damaged. Their bodies were tired. Their faces were calm. No one cheered. No one raised a fist or shouted victory. They simply existed in the moment. James walked through the group, checking on each team. A nod here. A quiet word there. He did not praise. He did not boast. They did not need it. The alien prisoners remained trapped but unharmed. Human guards watched them without anger. Weapons stayed lowered. Above, the alien fleets remained still. The warlords watched their screens as reports came in. Systems locked. Ground forces disabled. Control lost. No explosions. No dramatic end. Just control taken away. One warlord opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. Another looked away from the screen, unsettled. They had expected chaos. They had expected fear. Instead, they were watching order. On the surface, the sky began to change color as the planet's weak sun lowered. Long shadows stretched across the land. Michael zoomed his recorder toward the sky. He captured the silent fleets hanging above the world like frozen statues. He spoke quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "This is the moment," he said. No one answered. Jessica and David arrived from the outer perimeter. Their walk was slow, careful. They looked up at the sky, then back at the humans around them. David shook his head once, still not fully believing it. Jessica sat down beside Ashley and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, then steadied. John checked his scanner and frowned. No movement. No signals. He looked up, confused. "They stopped," he said quietly. "Yes," Lauren replied. "They did." Time passed. Seconds felt longer than minutes. The alien fleets did nothing. The warlords said nothing. The silence grew heavy. James finally spoke into the communicator again. His voice was even. "All units hold position. Do not advance. Do not provoke." The order spread quickly. Humans obeyed. Michael kept recording. He knew this silence would not last forever. But this moment mattered because it showed something important. The warlords had lost their voice. The mocking had ended. In the alien chambers, some warlords shifted uncomfortably. They were used to shouting orders. Used to fear and noise. Silence felt wrong. One of them reached for a control panel and stopped. His hand hovered in the air. What command could he give? There was nothing left to do. On the planet below, the humans remained still. A soft wind moved across the dust. Small rocks rolled gently. A torn banner from the old station fluttered once, then fell still. Michael slowly lowered the recorder. He looked around at the others. James stood near the station, watching the sky. Daniel and Lauren spoke quietly, reviewing systems. Ashley rested against a wall, eyes closed for a moment. David and Jessica shared water. John repaired damaged equipment. No one looked like a conqueror. They looked like survivors. Michael saved the recording. He labeled it simply, "Silence." This would be shown later. Not as a threat. Not as a warning. As proof. Proof that humans did not need to shout to be heard. Proof that strength did not always arrive loudly. Above the planet, the alien fleets remained frozen. Below, humans waited. The galaxy held its breath. And in those seconds of silence, everything changed. The silence did not break with anger or war. It ended with words being written. Far from the frontier world, in halls made of light and data, galactic records were opened. These records had not been changed in centuries. They held labels, judgments, and short descriptions of every known species. For humans, the words were simple and cruel. Fragile. Short-lived. Minor. Now those words were being erased. Alien scribes and record keepers worked without speaking much. Their hands moved slowly. Some hesitated before deleting old lines. Others paused as if remembering the laughter that once filled their chambers. Human, status revised. The new text was careful, resilient, adaptive, steadfast. No praise. No fear. Just truth. On the frontier world, the human presence began to fade. Ships lifted quietly into the sky. The old station powered down again. It had done its job. Emily stood on a small rise of rock and watched the stars. The sky was clear now. The alien fleets were gone. Only distant lights remained. She felt the quiet settle into her chest. Not relief. Not pride.
Peace.
She remembered the council chamber. The mocking voices. The way humans had stood silent while being judged. She remembered James standing still, eyes sharp. Michael recording silence. Daniel and Lauren planning without noise. Ashley working without rest. David, Jessica, and John walking through fire and dust. No one had shouted. No one had demanded respect. They had simply stood. James joined her on the ridge. He did not speak at first. He looked at the stars, the same way she did. "They will write about this," Emily said quietly. "Yes," James replied. "Will they understand?" she asked. James thought for a moment. "Some will," he said. "Some won't." That's enough. Back in the Galactic Archives, more changes were made. Training manuals were updated. Threat assessments rewritten. Old assumptions removed. Humans were no longer listed at the bottom. Students across the galaxy would read the new records. They would see humans described not as weak, but as steady. Not as loud, but as unbreakable. Some would question it. Others would remember the silence. On Earth, news reached the surface slowly. Messages passed through channels. Short reports. Calm voices. No celebrations filled the streets. People listened. Then they returned to their lives. That was how humans had always been. Michael watched the stars from his ship's window. He played back the recording one last time. The quiet still felt heavy even now. He archived it under a simple category.
History.
Ashley rested in a medical bay, eyes closed. For the first time in days, no alarm sounded. No injuries waited. Her hands were still. Daniel and Lauren reviewed reports together. They spoke softly, already thinking about what could be improved next time. Not for war, but for survival. David, Jessica, and John sat together, sharing food. They spoke of the test world, of mistakes made, of things learned. Their voices were calm. No one spoke about victory. Across space, alien leaders gathered again. This time, there was no laughter. No mocking tone. They spoke carefully. They remembered the moment their fleets stopped moving. They remembered the humans who did not advance. They remembered the silence that followed.
Fear did not guide them now.
Respect did. Emily continued to watch the stars. She thought about how small humans were compared to the galaxy. How fragile they once seemed. She smiled slightly. Fragile things break easily. Humans did not. James turned to leave, but Emily stayed a moment longer. The stars felt closer now, not because they had changed, but because humans had. Across the galaxy, a simple truth spread without force. Silence speaks loudest when humans decide to stand. The records would remember that. And so would the stars.